All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Electing Our Future. My name is Matt Impink. I'm the Manager of Policy and Political Affairs for the Indy Chamber, and we are very pleased to be your host for tonight. We are the host in part one of a three-part series called Electing Our Future, seeks to answer the question of, why should I care? And so many of you probably heard about the event tonight through the cover story that Nouveau did a couple weeks ago that really tries to challenge the city to step up and answer some of the big questions around why should you vote in an election, how can you get involved civically in a way that matters, and how can you get people to simply care and show up. We are lucky to have a number of sponsors for this series, and I'll try to do them justice very quickly and then get started. We are sponsored by the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee, or GIPSY, Indiana Bar Foundation, Indiana Humanities Council, Indianapolis Neighborhood Resource Center, the Indy Chamber, Indy Public Library, Indy Urban League, IU Center for Civic Literacy, IUPUI, the League of Women Voters of Indiana, Nouveau, University of Indianapolis, the Institute for Civic Leadership and Mayoral Archives, and WFYI. We're very pleased to be working with those sponsors, and they'll continue to support the next two events in the series. Please feel free to use social media throughout the events tonight. Using the hashtag #ElectingOurFuture is the hashtag we're going with. We especially encourage you to go and take your picture out front with the cardboard cutout of your typical voter, post it online, and share why you care, why you're planning on voting this November would be very important. The first forum tonight focuses on how Indianapolis works and is meant to give everyone here some background information needed that's going to help for the next two parts of the series. The next event is going to be on October 6th, and it focuses on the issues we face throughout the city. And lastly, on October 20th, what do we want Indianapolis to look like in 5, 10, or 15 years from now? We're going to get started tonight by taking a little poll. And what you're going to see, thank you, Mark. We'd like to see what you, our audience, already knows about this topic. So we ask you to participate in a little poll by using your cell phone. So we're going to switch over the feed here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take out your cell phone and you're going to send a new text. If I can type in my code. So you're going to send a new text to 22333 and use the word IndyPL. Once you send that text, you're going to get a response back, and then you can answer the first question. You simply want to answer the question using A, B, C, D, E, or F. If anyone's having trouble, we've got a couple people on the sides that can help you out. Simply raise your hand. So as we start getting results, you already see them popping up there. Are you guys answering? We're going to give you another few minutes to answer the poll. We're going to kind of see how many responses we have before we move on. Is it cities that you're hung up with? Yeah. Don't worry about that too much, Mark.
It could be cities or towns. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Cities and towns.
This is the first of three questions we're going to ask at the beginning. You're waiting to see what the majority of people are already saying. That's a smart strategy as well. I just voted. Take another 15 seconds or so to get your vote in. Is anyone having trouble sending your vote in? Just go and raise your hand. We'll have someone come and help you. Okay. Katie, can you see those people with the hands up? So what we're going to do is we're going to conduct all three of these questions at the beginning, and then at the end we're going to go back and ask these questions again. And we're going to see how the results change. Hopefully we correct any misunderstandings throughout the presentation. No pressure, guys. You're covering all of them, don't worry. Julia, are we ready for the next question? All right. As soon as Julia gets back to the control booth, we'll do the second question. So the second question, just simply in the same text dialog box, just simply type your letter answer in. How many townships are there in Marion County? The options are 0, 1, 8, 9, and 12. Did you guys vote? Let's take another 15 seconds to send your vote in. Got some answers across the board. That's interesting. We'll need to make sure to cover this one. Hopefully they'll see it 5 or 6 times. All right, I think we're ready to move on to the third question. Which issue below is the biggest expense the city of Indianapolis currently faces? Your options are roads, streets, and sidewalks, public safety, economic development, charter schools, or the new car sharing program, or personnel. Personnel shouldn't be on there, actually. What did you say? What it actually is. Are you the only 2 votes for C? I just voted. Take about 15 more seconds to vote, and we'll move on. Are you trying to stack the vote, Angie? All right, thank you very much for participating. Hopefully you all enjoyed that, gained some good background knowledge on where the audience is at. We're going to compare those to your responses at the end of the presentation. We are very lucky to be joined tonight by two excellent members of or employees of the Indy Chamber. My name is Matt Impink. I'm the manager of policy and political affairs for the Indy Chamber. I'm very fortunate to have my two colleagues and friends, Mark Fisher and Angela Smith-Jones, join us tonight. If you could, guys, go ahead and have a seat, and if you could have a round of applause for our panelists tonight, I really much appreciate it. The Indy Chamber, representing about 2,000 regional businesses, serves as the voice of progress and improvement in the region, uniting businesses and community to maintain a strong economy and quality of life. Our advocacy efforts, network events, economic development initiatives, and other member benefits position members, business leaders, and community for success. The two leaders of these efforts are Mark Fisher and Angela Smith-Jones. Mark Fisher is the Vice President of Government Relations and Policy Development. He has been at the Chamber for over a decade, working as a State House lobbyist and in economic development for the region. He focuses on economic growth, transportation, local government, and fiscal policy. Angela Smith-Jones is the Director of Public Policy at the Chamber. Since 2010, she has served in a number of roles, including State House lobbyist, in-house counsel, and policy researcher. A veteran of state government as the Director of Indiana Professional Licensing Agency, Angela focuses on the areas of education, workforce, reentry, environment, and sustainability for the Chamber. Could we have another round of applause for our guest? And the floor is yours.
I'm a pretty loud guy, but they've asked me to use this since they're recording it. So I'll take my own informal poll. Who here thinks Indianapolis was the first state capital? Oh, good. You're right. Indianapolis is, in fact, the second capital. The first capital of Indiana is down in Corydon in southern Indiana. As our state was populated, a lot of people came through the Cumberland Pass and came up through Kentucky, and that's where the major population center was for our state in the early years. In 1821, the leaders felt that it was much more appropriate as a state to have your capital be geographically located. If you look across the nation, a lot of capitals are geographically located or centrally located, so people from all across the state can have equal access to the state house and to the state business. Indianapolis was, so it is kind of an accidental city because they chose this site next to the White River. It was kind of a swampy land. Thinking, oh great, the White River, we can use, waterways are a major form of transportation for commerce and moving people. Unfortunately, the White River never really turned out to be a business hub. I think we're right now still the largest city in the world on a non-navigable body of water. It was laid out, the original mile square. So if you're familiar with downtown Indianapolis, the streets north, south, east, and west, they're all 5 blocks from the geographic center, which is actually Washington Street, is the old US 40, the old National Road. It was laid out by Alexander Ralston. So those of you on Mass Ave that know Ralston's Tap House is named after Alexander Ralston. He was an understudy of Pierre L'Enfant, who laid out Washington, D.C. So we have the grid system with intersecting diagonals, streets coming into the center of the city where the monument is. But the monument was actually first supposed to be our governor's mansion. Nobody actually lived there. The story goes that the governor's wife didn't want to air her laundry in the public, so they moved it. Now we have a beautiful monument, but really, Alexander Ralston laid out this grid system in the mile square, and we've been growing out ever since.
So a little bit on our counties. There are 92 counties in the state of Indiana, and 9 townships. So for those of you who put anything else, sorry. And then we also have municipalities, which are cities and towns. But I want to give you a little funny history story. Actually, we were discussing this earlier today, that the way a county limit was determined is it was however far a person probably a man back then in the 1800s, could ride in a day from the county seat out and back. So that's why we have all these goofy looking designs. So part of it had to do with how heavy the guy was, how strong the horse was, how great the weather was. So that's how they determined. So that's why we have 92 counties and why they're so bizarrely outlined. So I thought that was a really cool historical fact to know. And then I already told you the secret about the townships. Another interesting fact to know is that originally the townships, because within each city there are townships, it was actually intended to be the reverse order. So now we have large and larger cities and towns that actually run the local government, fiscal and public safety, et cetera. But originally it was designed that the township would be the hub that would really take care of all of that, and outside of that would be, cemeteries, et cetera, outside of the township. So now, of course, that's all incorporated into our cities and our towns. But another little interesting historical fact that you may or may not know. Are you next?
So counties typically will handle, if you have cities that are incorporated and you have counties outside of the city limits, they handle county roads, sheriff's patrols, the county jails. There are separate functions from between city and county, but interestingly with Indianapolis, for the most part, we are a consolidated city and town, or city and county.
We are.
So this is what Marion County, Indianapolis looked like in the 1960s. The Center Township, which would be the block in between. So there's 9. It looks like a tic-tac-toe board. 9 townships. We are a hodgepodge of cities and towns throughout Marion County. What happened is post-World War II, we had a lot of returning veterans coming in. They probably previously lived somewhere in the countryside or smaller towns, started coming to the urban center very quickly to fill jobs that were coming online with the large-scale auto manufacturing site. So WFYI did a great series, I think in the late 90s, called Indianapolis in the 50s. If you ever want to see how Indianapolis grew post-World War II around these large auto manufacturing plants, so think GM, Chrysler, Ford Visteon, what is now Raytheon. You had RCA, these large-scale manufacturing plants, and people needed to fill the job. So people were locating outside the center city, and that's what really fueled the suburban growth in Indianapolis outside of the old city limits, which is what is labeled Center Township. The darker gray area is actually the old city limits of Indianapolis. Well, when everybody left the center city, and we have some population projections or population numbers to show how much population left Center Township. It wasn't just people coming in from the countryside; it was people actually leaving Center Township to go to the white picket fence, pink, pretty pink houses, and around these manufacturing sites. The tax base went with it. So I'm too young to remember what it was like downtown when it was dead, but apparently the joke was you could shoot off a cannon downtown after 5 and you wouldn't hit anything because everything was vacated. So with a declining tax base and a growing tax base outside of the old city limits, Mayor Lugar spearheaded an effort to combine city and county government in what we called Unigov. We're not the first city to consolidate with the county. We followed Nashville, Jacksonville. Others have learned from us. Louisville recently consolidated their services. And what that did was it bought us 30 years, maybe 40 years of tax base. As people fled the center city, they went to the townships. We'll get into what was not merged in Unigov, but we were able to capture the tax revenues that otherwise had fled the city to support the center city. Now a lot of people like to say it's the reverse right now. We've created this donut hole in downtown so outside, up until the early 2000s, we had a donut hole of wealth, of poverty in downtown and wealth surrounding. Now we have kind of this reverse donut hole where we have a lot of wealth coming back into downtown proper. Then we have poverty and distressed areas, and then in the exurbs or the outer county suburbs, a lot of wealth being created there. So right now we went, overnight we went from the 26th largest city to the 12th largest city. It is also important to note that when we consolidated Marion County, we consolidated a city to 400 square miles. That, just to put that into perspective, you can fit 3 cities of Detroit in one city of Indianapolis. So that does present some very unique challenges with land use patterns, with legacy infrastructure costs that we see, with police and fire service having to spread out, with transportation infrastructure having to spread out over 400 miles. It might have bought us 30 or 40 years, and maybe we didn't confront the challenges we should have beforehand, but now we're starting to deal with the challenges of having 400 square miles of legacy costs.
One interesting thing, as Mark was talking about the spread of the city, which is very unique to Indianapolis and is actually really cool, is that you can live anywhere from a wonderful historical single unit apartment building or condo in downtown Indianapolis, and you can also live on a multi-acre farm and still be inside Indianapolis proper, which is a pretty rare phenomenon. So as you are talking to people who are relocating, don't forget that there are so many options, and we still also have that first ring of suburb housing, which is great. There's still good yards, et cetera, but that's something that people forget. The residential stock that we have in this city actually encompasses any and every type of living. So really, a lot of that growth, which we'll talk about later, that's spurring out into the far suburbs, it's fine. It's just that they may not necessarily have needed to do that had they really known all of the residential options in Indianapolis/Marion County. One other thing on Unigov is it did consolidate the city-county operations. So what was historically the city, what was historically townships, et cetera. It did consolidate under one mayor. So it's interesting, when you say Marion County or Indianapolis, you're really saying the same thing. And so that's why we have a city-county council, and we still have an executive officer that's the mayor that is elected. But interestingly enough, we still have separate governments in the townships. So they still have separate little entities that operate, because remember, I told you a while back that they were originally created to be the hub of local government. And so there is still the functions within each township, as well as we still have the entire consolidated Marion County/Indianapolis. So that's something to keep in mind as we're going forward.
Yeah, so in Indiana, can't have, or you're not supposed to have, special legislation for areas. So they created what were called a Class 1 city or consolidated city. That's why we have 150 legislators, and most of them outside of Indianapolis always say, oh, I hate dealing with Indianapolis issues. But it's really important to note that Indiana is not a home rule state. All of our local governments are creation of the state legislature, and that's why our state legislature still has so much authority over what we do in Indianapolis. In order to enact Unigov, they had to get special legislation passed to consolidate our services. It took 2 years to do. Actually, probably took longer than that. There's lore of Mayor Lugar going on the nightly news and giving out then the Speaker of the House, future governor's personal landline, and told all the residents to call the Speaker of the House to give them the authority to consolidate government. So we do have 150 legislators that still vote on Indianapolis tax structure, government structure, budgets, any tax we want to raise, or any revenue stream, or any different form of government we want to take. We still have to go to the west end of Market Street and ask mom and dad for permission. The mayor of Indianapolis is the county executive as well. So most counties have 3 county commissioners. Those county commissioners are what's called the executive branch, while the county council is the fiscal body or the legislative branch. County commissioners are weird because they're both legislative and they're executive. But the councils and surrounding counties are really the fiscal bodies. So we got rid of our 3 commissioners and went to 1 county executive. To give you perspective, no other county in the state has this. Allen County has been trying to push this single county executive concept unsuccessfully at the legislature for several years. So we actually transferred our county commissioners to the county assessor, the county treasurer, and the county auditor. I believe, are our county commissioners in order to fill boards and commissions, which Angel will talk about in a little bit. City County Council used to be 29, going down to 25,
Right.
getting rid of the at-large seats. We'll talk a little bit about that.
That was, again, legislative action.
It was legislative action. So the interplay between the state legislature as the state capital, as the largest city, the largest economy, is a very interesting dynamic. How many governors from Indianapolis have we had in Indiana? Anybody? Only
I see a
one.
zero.
Only one.
Okay.
Mitch Daniels
Right.
was the first and only governor of Indiana from Indianapolis. Not everything was consolidated. We do have 4 excluded cities and towns. 4. They elect their own mayors if they're a city. Now, Speedway has a town manager and a town council president, but Lawrence, Beech Grove, Southport are cities. They have mayors. They have their own councils. They also get to vote on the mayor of Indianapolis and the Indianapolis, Marion County, City County Council. So they get a lot of representation. They have some special things that they still deal a lot with public safety, their own public safety departments, so police and fire. They have a lot of their own public utilities, even though some of them might not be doing as well as the Indianapolis Public Utility. And they still have a lot of control over kind of regulations and zoning within their own city. So perfect example, when we created the Indianapolis smoking ban, right? So everybody thought, oh, we're going to pass a smoking ban and it's going to be countywide. Well, it's countywide except for in the excluded cities. So we had to go to the excluded cities and towns and create a specific ordinance for a smoking ban within those within those cities and towns. It's really confusing because people think, oh, we're Unigov. We're all one system. We're not. Originally, we did not consolidate police. We did not consolidate fire districts. So still to date, Beech Grove and Lawrence still have their own fire, and Speedway. I don't know if Speedway has their own fire department. But the western townships, so we'll get into some recent consolidations, but we've had to consolidate fire departments in Indianapolis township by township, and we've got the holdouts on the western side. Let's see what happens to their tax rates in a few years. But we did consolidate in 2005, 2006, consolidated the police. We merged the county sheriff's department, which was patrolling the area outside of Indianapolis, the old city limits, and IPD, which is Indianapolis Police, which patrolled inside the city limits. People inside the city should have been outraged because they were subsidizing or paying for patrols of the sheriff when they were not even receiving the benefit of sheriff's patrols. The sheriff still ran the jail and still provided security for city-county buildings, but they were not patrolling inside the city limits, yet the people that lived in the city limits were still paying for their patrol. So it made a great case for consolidation. The other thing that wasn't consolidated, and this is the topic that Angela is going to take.
Well, yeah. Okay, so in the educational system, as you can see, hopefully, that actually Indianapolis Public Schools comprise Center Township, the original city limits of Indianapolis. However, we have 11 school districts total. So what is very interesting is a lot of what you hear about the challenges of public education. What's the first school district that comes to mind for you? IPS. But trust and believe, we have exactly the same educational challenges in the township schools as we do in the public school system. It's just that because we have the name of the city, it is the original city limits, most people draw that same conclusion as we all do. And so most people never remember to discuss any challenges and or victories that we have in the township schools.
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah.
Just to think about this, I talked about how Unigov probably bought us 30 or 40 years. Probably for 30 or 40 years, the township schools that weren't consolidated got to sit back and say, hey, we're not IPS. But demographics have shifted so quick. We'll show some demographic information later. Demographics have shifted so quick that they weren't confronting the challenges that they need. And as Angela says, we have a lot of the same challenges that IPS faces, the township schools are facing now.
Right. So IPS has been actually seeing the trickle over the last 30 years, and now you will start to see things manifest in the township schools. with the same kind of challenges. One other thing to keep in mind is that we also have charter schools, private parochial schools in Indianapolis. And one interesting thing, kind of going back to the state legislature, is that right now, the charter schools are in the largest, most urbanized cities in our state because it is based on dollars per student. So if you think about it, if you're out in the sticks somewhere in Indiana, then you don't have as many students, so your value is lower than in the core of Indianapolis. There actually aren't any charter schools in the townships area as of yet. So just something to keep in mind, that is an option. And also I had mentioned the private and parochial. One interesting fact that you may or may not know, but our mayor, the mayor of Indianapolis, is the only mayor that has unilateral provision over creating charter schools in the country, not in the state, just in the country. And so that is something interesting to know. We have the Office of Education and Innovation, and the standards and the requirements for actually obtaining a charter school license in Indianapolis is very strict. And the state also does that, but you need to know how critically important the work that our mayor does in really keeping tabs on what's going on in our educational system when it comes to charters. So just keep in mind that all that's going on with the educational front outside of just IPS in the Indianapolis and Marion County.
So 3 main chartering bodies for Marion County: the
Oh, yeah.
four-year college
institutions.
four-year institutions, public and private. That's been recently changed. It used to be the 4-year public institutions.
And
The state now has a charter authority to charter schools throughout the state, and then the mayor of Indianapolis.
Right. And the most stringent is the mayor's office.
Absolutely. Recent changes, we did mention that with Unigov was not the end-all, be-all. We didn't consolidate schools, fire, police, townships. But in 2005, then Mayor Peterson launched Indy Works, really aimed at the township reform and focused on the police and fire consolidation. I remember sitting on we were advocates of this. I remember sitting on the monument downtown, and the Peterson administration was passing out 100 grand bars because that was how much we were wasting a day by not consolidating. They'd done the math. But the fact is, some have challenged the savings numbers of the consolidation, but they're not taking into account the opportunity costs or what we've avoided paying in inflationary costs. So Indy Works was successful in getting 5 of the 8 townships to consolidate. Again, it's township by township, so you have to have the mayor, the city county council, the township trustee, and the township board all agree to merge. 5 of them have said, budgetary reasons, I'm going to merge. The 3 western townships have not merged. We did successfully consolidate the police. Important to note, when we passed Unigov, 1968, I actually believe is when it was passed, they didn't say, oh, we're going to give the locals a chance to decide, or it's going to be up to the local fiscal body or the mayor of Indianapolis. They just did it. With Indy Works, Unigov 2.0, what they said was, we'll give you the permission to talk about it and enact it locally. So again, going back to the legislature, passed, they would just do it. Now they're shifting the responsibility to making the decisions at the local level. When Mayor Ballard came into office, 2008, Unigov 2.0 really tried to streamline that fire consolidation. Instead of getting the townships to give up their budgets and their control, Mayor Ballard has been trying to push where the city county council can make that decision in agreement with the mayor's office. We took the people that have to give up control out of the equation. That still has not passed. My favorite line when I testify is, I've been here for 10 years doing this. Please don't make me come back in 11th. They still don't pass it. It always gets hung up in the Senate. And then Senate Bill 621, which passed in 2013, very controversial. It eliminated the 4 at-large council seats. The 4 at-large council seats up until 2011 had always followed the mayor. All 4 were of the party of the mayor. It gave the mayor a little bit of extra cushion on the city county council, had some folks on the council that took a county-wide view instead of just thinking about their narrow districts. They eliminated the at-large and then gave the city controller a lot more ability, we'll get into some budgetary issues, to control county offices' budgets a little bit more because there was some spending, a lack of controls from the mayor's perspective, who is supposed to be a county-wide executive, that they felt that was necessary. It also gave the mayor more control over the Metropolitan Development Commission. We don't address the Metropolitan Development Commission, but it is our county-wide redevelopment commission. It is a very important body. They both plan and do redevelopment projects. So they're the planning body. So Indy Rezone, if anybody has participated in any of those, the MDC, the Metropolitan Development Commission, is the body that first adopts that, and then it goes to the City County Council for adoption. And they also do redevelopment projects, so they administer TIF funds as well.
So here, we're going to go into greater depth of this, so I'm just going to give real high level on this because Mark and I are going to start hitting on each specific area. But just so you get a sense of the structure of our city-county, and that we elect the legislative body, the city-county council, as well as the executive, which we have discussed, the mayor's office.
No, I'm looking for the remote, but I just put it in my switch slides.
So, yeah, actually, we can probably go right to, yeah, there we go. So, and after the elections are held, which actually we're about to, does everybody know that we're electing a mayor?
Electing our future? Do you know we're electing our future?
We are electing our oh my gosh, I work with this guy. So yes, we are electing our future this fall. But once the mayor comes in, there are deputy mayors that the mayor actually appoints. Not everything is an elected position, as you will find as we're going through this. And these offices, actually, the mayor will appoint who runs those different city departments. Here are a listing of some of the ones that you probably have heard, and the mayor gets to select who runs those. We're also, oh, go ahead.
I thought the newest one up there is the Department of Code Enforcement, which was created, I think, in 2009.
That's very effective.
Yeah, the Department of Code Enforcement split from DMD. DMD does all the planning and zoning. Code Enforcement does building permits, zoning enforcement. They have greater authority now, or work very closely with Health and Hospital Corporation on health code violations as well, especially abandoned houses and stuff like that. So if you have to get a permit to build, you're going to go to the Department of Code Enforcement. Jim Rawlinson, right here. Sorry, not to plug the chamber, but if you have a commercial project and you need answers about zoning and building permits, we have a liaison that can help you for free. He might not have the answer, but he knows how to find the answer. So that's one of the services that the chamber works very closely with the city to do.
Right, we want to make sure everyone is compliant with the code. So, and then the other I don't want to, I feel like I'm kind of like talking too much when we're going to start diving deeper into each one, so I'd rather like press on to the next areas.
Oh, on the county offices. So we talked about so we had this new constitution in 1851. We had a constitution, it went really well. I talked about the waterways and how they were great for commerce. Well, we tried to build some canals, and by the time we were done with the canal, the railroads came in, but also we bankrupted the state because we had a bunch of local officials in cahoots with some contractors, and they stole a lot of money and bankrupted the state. So we had to shut everything down, restart, created this new constitution, and we have these constitutional offices at the county level. Not everything is developed by the legislature. We actually have constitutional offices. And a lot of this was created, separate offices, to create those checks and balances, because there was such little oversight when we built the canal that people were able to get away with such graft. Well, they created a lot of offices to make sure that didn't happen again. So a little bit of, who is the only elected official that can arrest the sheriff? The coroner. That's right. Yeah, they give him some strange powers, right? The coroner. So these all have different functions. I can't say with certainty that it's not time to kind of relook at some of these functions. Not something the chamber's pushing. It's just there are a lot of offices to create checks and balances with the advent of the internet and things being public. On, do we really need that many offices? But that's neither here nor there. So you can see the structure. So you have the township offices, township constables. They do a lot of like serving warrants and eviction notices. You got the township trustee administers poor relief in the cemeteries where there are cemeteries. The township board oversees the township trustee allegedly, and then the small claims courts. You have a lot of county offices. Again, we have the ex officio county commissioners when we got rid of our 3 county commissioners from Marion County and gave them to the assessor, the auditor, and the treasurer. Yes, there are some elected officials that were elected that weren't filled in on the whole Unigov thing, and all of a sudden their office had dramatically changed. So municipal corporations, part of the new Constitution. We didn't really want to go in debt because we had a bad experience with debt in the state. So they really limited how much the state and local governments could go into debt. To get around these debt limits and to provide more flexibility, we created these really cool things called municipal corporations. Municipal corporations are really designed for a very specific purpose. They serve various geographic boundaries, and they are governed by boards that are, their boards are appointed usually by some combination of the mayor, the council, and the county commissioners, which again aren't really county commissioners. So we have 6 in Indianapolis Capital Improvement Board. They manage the large sporting venues and hospitality venues in downtown Indianapolis. A Health and Hospital Corporation oversees Eskenazi Health. They also have the Marion County Health Department. Indianapolis Airport Authority, that's pretty explanatory. But did you know that Indianapolis Airport Authority actually has airports outside of Marion County? So they operate the one in Fishers. I think there's one up in Montgomery County. But yeah, so they have some land outside of Marion County. The public library, Jackie, each has an executive director. Jackie Nenis, the executive director. And the Public Building Authority. I forgot about the County Building Authority. And then Indianapolis Public Transportation Authority, Indigo. In full disclosure, I'm an Indigo board member. So those boards oversee the functions, the budgets. These municipal corporations develop and adopt their own budgets, but then they have to submit them to the City County Council. The City County Council used to just be able to review them. Now they get to review them and send them back. If they don't like it, they don't want to approve the levies, they send it back and tell the board to redo their budget. And that was one of those changes that came about in Indy Works. That's right, Jackie, right? Thank you. So you can see, it mentions some combination of appointing authority, City County Council, County Commissioners, Mayor. We talked about the Metropolitan Development Commission. That is not up here, but the MDC is generally the majority of the appointments are going to be with the Mayor of Indianapolis as the county executive and the city mayor.
Legislative branch. So we kind of told you a little bit about that. So historically there were 29 city county councilors. So that is our local, the city legislative branch of city county council. The state is the state house, and they are on opposite sides of Market. So when we are at high time, sometimes we have to leave the state house and run across to the city, depending upon what's going on in our legislative agenda. But just so you get a sense of that. So there are now, did I tell you there are now 25? There used to be 29. Okay. They actually govern all local ordinances and laws. So you will hear on the news they are grappling with certain issues that are really just have a local impact. I'm trying to think of the most recent issue. Early childhood education was something that, as far as getting local funding for that actually went through City County Council. You've also heard about it on the state level, but there was an opportunity for the city to actually address some of those issues as well. So, what, you're breathing?
I would just say that Indianapolis, I'm sorry, Jackie, I keep pointing you out, but as a former city county councilor, there's been a lot of political rancor at the council lately.
Oh, yeah.
And
lately.
I think, there are a lot of blame to go around, but the vast majority of stuff that they deal with is pretty mundane and has overwhelming bipartisan support. I mean, they do parking restrictions. They do, stop signs, stoplights.
Yes, street lights. I mean,
yeah.
everything.
So you try to take some of that out and allow the DMD and DPW to really staff those and then take it to the council for approval. They they deal with some big, heady issues. It's really important, but the vast majority of what they do is pretty mundane, which would explain why this is probably the largest crowd that the council's seen in a while. Had they shown up, we get to go there quite frequently, and I just remember the 2007 property tax cap revolt when we had the overflow crowds and people were locked out of the city-county building. And I kind of looked at some friends and said, well, where have these people been? So I'm glad you guys showed up because anybody had been paying attention knew that property tax cap thing was going to, or the property tax increase was going to hit. There was a Supreme Court case that had determined we were shifting the way we assess. And then you had this thing called trending come in, but nobody was paying attention. So when it finally hit and people were seeing 500, 600% increase in the properties, well, what happened? Well, where were you? So it was good to see people engaged. I'd like to see that momentum continue and people continue to be engaged.
Well, an interesting fact is recently we did a poll just to kind of get a sense of what do you know about your city? And sadly, very few people had heard of Councilor Mike McQuillan and Councilor President Maggie Lewis, which is really sad because they actually govern everything that's important to us on a daily basis. And so most people are kind of tuned into what's going on the state and maybe on the federal level, but it is really important to pay attention to what's going on locally because what they do governs where we live in our space every day. And so it's so important to really kind of populate that. But Mark is right. When we're down there, and unless it's a huge issue that's like early childhood education or maybe the parking meters several years back, most people are not dialed in at all to the point where they don't know who their city county councilor is, even when it's election time, until they get into the booth to vote. Another thing, oh wait, I wasn't quite ready, but that's okay. I'm going to go over special service districts. It's actually legislatively created function where different districts and are kind of combined to really a sole purpose or a small purpose just to govern certain entities. So for example, like water and sewage or police and safety or something like that. So it is created legislatively for a specific purpose, and there is a board that governs that. But that's something that, yes, multi-jurisdictional. But that's something you may not have learned in high school government, or maybe you slept since then like I did. And just want to give you a little refresher on that. So now we can switch. Okay, the judicial branch. So this, of course, was created by our Constitution in 1851. And what we have are, so you see how we have the circuit court and the superior court. They're actually both trial courts. They're both courts of origin. They have jurisdiction over all matters, both civil and criminal, but was originally created through the Constitution, which they gave the legislature the authority to create the superior courts. So does anybody want to take a guess as to how many superior courts we have in the state of Indiana? How many? 7? 3? Think, 1? Think back to horses and how far you can ride back and forth in the day. It would be, so okay, that was a trick question. That wasn't fair. It really was originally supposed to be 92, but we have 2 counties that are so small, they consolidated them, so we have 90. But 92 was the original answer. So just to give you a sense of how literally consistently they were thinking when they drafted our state's constitution. So there are 90 superior courts. And what happened is, as the number of cases grew, which I know you can't imagine that we lawyers would ever want to go to trial more and make more money, but as the number of cases grew, both civil and criminal, the legislature had to create the circuit court. And so really the circuit court is just to handle almost the overflow of the superior. So they both have general jurisdiction. Superior courts, there are 1 in every county, whereas circuit courts, there can be multiple circuit courts in a county. It's just to kind of start to handle some of the additional caseload. The other thing I want to make sure, so all of that falls under there. We had also talked about small claims earlier, and those are for cases that are $6,000 or less. So if you have a landlord dispute, you owe first and last month's rent when you scooted out because you wanted to hurry up and get married, well, that would be a small claims case. You would not go to Superior Circuit Court for that. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting. Oh, there are also city and town courts, and that's not as prevalent. That's legislatively created as well, and there's only 47 of those, and they really handle not the small claims being the fiscal, but they handle the lower offenses like a misdemeanor or something like that. So again, kind of like, no, they do misdemeanors too, so that's some criminal. It's just the low end cases, so it's not small claims where it's only financial, but they'll do just the low level cases. And there's only 47, and I don't think we talked about that in government high school class either, but just a little known fact for you. And then of course we do have the appellate court, sorry. So we have the appellate court 1, Supreme Court 1, and then it just trickles up. So depending upon what happens at your superior court level, that's the first round. Then if you want to appeal, that's the appellate court and then the Supreme Court.
Sorry. So we have a lot of challenges too. Talked about the 11 school districts, plus private and parochial schools, plus charter schools, and those are 3 different sources of charter schools. We have what we've discovered, on full disclosure again, the Indy Chamber has been an advocate for what we call a non-resident income tax. A lot of people want to call it a commuter tax.
Just going to whisper.
I like to call it a non-resident income tax. Income taxes, for the vast majority of our state's history, local governments have been primarily funded by property taxes. In the late 70s, early 80s, they started to create local income taxes. And they created local income taxes to slow the rate of property tax growth, or to replace a levy, or replace money that otherwise should have come from property taxes. Income taxes were never meant to be the main source of revenue for local governments in Indiana. So when they adopted these local income taxes, if you lived in a county that didn't have an income tax, but you worked in a county that did have an income tax, the county that you worked in got to keep half of it until your county adopted one. Well, that was great until about 4 years ago, when every single county in the state adopted a local income tax. So we have looked around the country to try to find cities and states and metro areas that have local income taxes, and Indianapolis in the state of Indiana is the only one we've been able to identify where there is not some form of revenue sharing of income taxes between the county in which you work and the county in which you live. We have 205,000 people driving to Marion County every day to work that are not paying local income taxes. And now, 2009, 2010, property taxes were probably roughly 75% of our general fund revenues. It's down to less than 50% now. We are more and more reliant on income taxes as the main source of revenue. And it's not just the fact that we have 205,000 people. We have 205,000 people. It's about a net of 150,000, 160,000 people driving in every day, earning $18 billion a year. So that's money that is not taxed to hire police officers, to pave our roads, to pay for public safety services, to pay for education services like early childhood education. So we've been an advocate of finding a way to capture some of the revenue of those people that work in Marion County but live elsewhere. You can't be a suburb of nowhere, but we also need strong suburbs. And that goes the other way. If somebody lives in Marion County, we have 50 to 60,000 residents that leave Marion County every day to go to another county of work. That county should be able to capture some form of revenue that they're not. But when we've talked about this, we've also discovered that really nobody knows how their taxes are generated or what they're used to pay for. Hey, do property taxes pay for our schools to operate? No, not really. Only transportation and infrastructure, or transportation and capitals, right? That's why you're seeing all these, the discussion about the school funding formula, because when we capped property taxes, the state raised the sales tax to 7%, and took 1% to fund statewide education, the per diem that they get per student. So really, the operations of schools are funded at the state level, and that's why there's so much discussion about the school funding formula this past year. So we also found out that when we have a 2% food and beverage tax in Marion County, how much of that pays for cops? 0. When the surrounding counties passed a 1% food and beverage tax, they got to keep half of their revenue and anything in excess of $5 million to pay for roads, police, whatever. So we we like to say that Indianapolis, Marion County, one, we try to export as much of the cost to build our really shiny stadia, but we don't get to capture the revenue that comes in and generated. Sales tax, there's no sales tax at the local level. We don't get to keep sales tax in the state or in the city. So we hear a lot of people, well, I come into Marion County and I eat at the restaurants. I go to a Colts game and eat at the restaurants. You guys should be flush with cash. We don't get to keep any of that to pay for police, fire, infrastructure. To pay, exactly. But the surrounding communities get to keep half theirs and anything in excess of $5 million. You got to pay for the debt that generates so much of that state tax revenue, about $1 billion a year generated in Marion County in sales tax alone. So all we're saying is we need to look at the equitable distribution of tax revenue, mostly where it's generated. So I want to keep going. We have legacy costs. We have 400 square miles. That's a lot of infrastructure to pay for. It's also very difficult to fund a transit system when you try to cover all 400 square miles. So how did we get here? So between 1950 and 2010, Center Township lost 194,424 residents, essentially 58% of its population, moved out of Center Township. That's why we had to pass Unigov. But then around 2010, the 8 surrounding counties outside of Marion County equaled the population of Marion County. But the wealth has not, a lot of what we've seen is the wealth has moved out. We have seen people continue to move in. Marion County actually had a faster growth rate than Hamilton County last year, but the wealth is really what we're concerned about now, that we are reliant on income taxes to fund our local government services. So you can see where the population has shifted. And this is where we're gaining and losing population. We have about 27% of our population earns less than $25,000 a year. We are losing middle and upper middle class families. We're hemorrhaging them. If you take this trend line out, we actually start to see people coming back into Marion County, which tells us one simple fact. If you can afford private schools and it doesn't impact your quality of life, you stay. People make housing decisions to two main drivers: quality of the education and perceptions of crime. So we need to find a way that we become an attractive city for those people that are earning, especially during their peak earning years. So we know, it doesn't have the age on here, does it? No. Okay, so similar for age, once you hit, 30.
Childbearing. When you're having children.
Age, you're moving to the suburbs. We get a lot of empty nesters and pejoratively dinks, dual income, no kids, or millennials that are really starting to repopulate the core city, but we're still hemorrhaging family age, middle and upper middle class families. So what's happened? Is this you or is this me still?
I think that's you still.
Okay. So this is 10 years. A qualified census tract means people earn less than 60% of the area median gross income or have a poverty rate of at least 25%. In 2003, most of the poverty was still confined to Center Township. Over the decade, and this is what we talked about, for the school systems, they got to spend 30 years saying we're not IPS. And then look what happened in a decade. And we have been ill prepared to deal with this demographic shift. And look what happened right downtown.
Millennials.
Tech. So really, we have a situation. We can't be a Detroit. We can't be a smaller geographic city that redevelops their population and displaces people that are in poverty and are in challenged neighborhoods to a different city. We look at St. Louis, what happened with Ferguson. Those are inner ring suburbs. Those are right here. Yep. It's not like they're out here. Ferguson, is essentially right here. Yep. So we have to confront systemic challenges in Marion County to address the opportunity gap. We'll get into some of the bigger challenges, but really this happened so quickly that I'm not sure that a lot of the townships were quite prepared for it.
And you, as Mark had mentioned earlier, it's also very prevalent in education because typically the children who are of lower socioeconomic status also have greater academic challenges. And so that's why I mentioned what you have seen and will see is that we have the IPS magnet schools, which if you pay attention to where they're located, they're pretty much in the affluent neighborhoods where those citizens are like, I demand to not have to move and that you will provide the service for which I'm paying in my taxes. And those schools are doing very well. And then you have that flight or that push of the poverty that's gone out. And so now you will start to hear more and more about the township schools having academic challenges for their attainment, et cetera, with their students, because now they're getting the students that were historically only in IPS, and now in IPS you're getting either the mix and or the more affluent students in the IPS district. So that's where you're starting to see some of the shift in housing. More people are going to be willing to come back into Indianapolis. That's also a global trend, and as well the academic achievement, because there's going to be more of a mix or more affluent living in the IPS school district.
We do have some representatives from IPS. I won't put them on the spot, but IPS does have a great story. They have more options, more diverse styles of learning, and more options than any other school district in the state. People don't know a lot about their magnet programs, but Angela and I both send our kids to the IPS magnet programs, which that's a decade ago. If you would have asked if we're going to an IPS school, probably would have said no. So they are making great strides.
Absolutely.
So this is what chaps me a little bit, sorry sir, about the income taxes not being shared, at least. There's no form of revenue sharing. We provide a significant amount of jobs for the state. 10% of all jobs that pay over $40,000 a year are in downtown Indianapolis. 4% of all jobs in the state of Indiana are in downtown Indianapolis, and they're high-paying jobs. What we're seeing is a creation of very high-paying jobs being filled by people that live in the suburbs, and then jobs that are on the lower end of the skill and pay scale being created in the suburbs, but not being able to be accessed by people that live in the city because we don't have a transit system.
Right.
So not only do we get the legacy costs of 400 square miles, we also have to, and we have lower income, we have a lot of people that live outside of our county that are generating incomes but not paying income tax. So we have to have a higher income tax rate. That's actually 1.77 now. We just raised our income tax rate to pay for police and hiring more police officers. So we're now at 1.77. We're past Hancock, past Morgan. Morgan, that's largely a function. They don't have a lot of commercial property. They also didn't pass the food and beverage tax, so they didn't get to keep half that revenue when they had the opportunity. But if you look at, we have 50 some odd thousand residents, workers coming in from Hamilton County alone, earning high incomes, so they get to have high incomes. They also have the lowest property tax rates in the state because they're subsidized by high incomes earned in Marion County. This is not a dig on Hamilton County or Carmel or anything. This is just the fact of where money is generated versus where it is distributed.
Oh, yeah. So we've actually kind of been talking about this, and Mark had mentioned that we've lost over $174 million in revenue over the past 3 years, and a lot of it is due to, as we had discussed, the property tax caps. So does anybody recall when the property tax caps went into effect? 2009? Yeah, it was a 2008 legislative session under Governor Daniels, and it's the 3-2-1 formula. So, for example, or 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 3-2-1, 1-2-3, whatever, however you want to count. But residential is capped at 1% of the assessed value, and then agricultural land or ag is at 2%, and everything else is at 3%. So that is what we are discussing. That really impacts education, as we had talked about earlier, and like we said, it keeps coming back to really understanding where your tax dollars go. It would have been cool if we had a video to show you, like some cartoon, so you could really get a grasp of how little really comes into Indianapolis, Marion County, even though everyone, especially in the state legislature, they all think that it all comes back here. So you get a clear understanding of how it does not.
Once the surrounding communities, the suburban counties, have also been hit very hard.
Oh, yeah.
By property tax caps, because they were very content being bedroom communities.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of a sudden businesses are taxed at 3 times what a residential property is taxed at, you need commercial properties in your district. If you look at what's happened in the Zionsville school districts, Westfield, they were traditionally bedroom communities. They were housing, but they now have had to step up their game in attracting commercial development, whereas, before tax caps, they probably wouldn't have chased all these businesses because they were happy to be a bedroom community. It's also important to note, going back to, about 50% of Center Township isn't
It's
even
not
taxable. It's not even assessed
It is not.
because it's government land.
That's right.
It's nonprofit land. So keep that in mind. We do have a lot of commercial property in Center Township, but half the property is not even taxable.
Right. So yet again, another little known fact. So here's some really interesting data that most people don't understand how much of the city's budget goes to public safety. It is in the 2015 budget, I think these are 2014 numbers.
Yeah.
So that says 89%, but the 2015 budget, it was 92%. And you can just see how it continues to grow and eat up the revenue that we are able to get for the city goes to public safety. Another thing, what? Oh, okay.
That number is the green and blue added together, correct?
Yes, 92%, yes. Because it actually, what it goes to, it is not to, and please jump in at any time if you think we're off track, but it does not go to adding more police officers to the police force. What it ends up going to are maintaining those that we have. It goes to retirement funds. You have to improve upon the cars, the vehicles that they're driving, gas costs, insurance, etc. So I think we're going to have Q&A in a little bit, right?
On a positive note.
Oh, we do not have to worry about having unfunded retirement plans for our police
pension
department.
plans are fully
Our
funded.
pension plans are fully funded.
That's
We're good
a great
to go.
thing. If you look at what's
That's
going
good.
on in Detroit and Chicago.
Yeah, that's good. Right. They're having major problems because of that. But I just want to make sure. I think those are yes. Okay.
All right.
I want to make sure we're
So
covering
these are the
everything.
challenges as you think and you go to the voting booth. What do we want to be thinking about? We just did a poll where likely voters what their top priorities. By far, the issue of crime has come up. People are very, very concerned with crime. Again, we have pockets of crime. You've heard the Department of Public Safety talk about the 4 crime hotspots.
Yeah.
Generally, violent crime is fairly isolated in Marion County, but that's not the perception, and therefore it's not the reality. People make their home choices based on perceptions of crime and quality of education.
And they are directly related if you think about it, based upon how great of an education you are getting and the hope that you are less likely to create a crime. If you have less hope and you're getting a poor education, then you are more likely to create a crime. So it's actually not rocket science. It's actually simple math. Like, you can do it on your toes and fingers, but people aren't drawing that connection. And in fact, I heard this morning on the news, it was the first time that I recall, they actually showed a picture of the city of small, and it actually showed the intersections and when they were talking about a crime. So that actually is better, so that people get a sense of really where the crimes are occurring and not just thinking it's all 400,000 square miles or whatever, that the city, that's where it's all happening right there. No, it's happening in those pockets.
Those of you who live maybe in Irvington, a shooting on the Near East Side. Oh, that Near East Side is like 100 square miles, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Something, Indianapolis MSA at least, Indianapolis, Marion County, we rank 46 out of 50 for metro areas in economic mobility. That means if you're born poor in Indianapolis, likelihood is you're going to stay poor. If you look at this, so this was released out of a study out of Harvard. If you look at the map of our kind of cities that measure along with us, it's like Detroit and then Dixie.
Yeah.
So looking at the opportunity and the prosperity gap, again, 27% of our population earns less than $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
Reliance on income taxes, shifting demographics. We have a lot of millennials and empty nesters, a lot of wealth coming into the center city. Suburbanization of poverty. We saw that graph. But also mentioned the regional job growth, the jobs that, only Detroit and Cleveland were hit harder as far as exodus of traditional manufacturing out of the core of the city over the past 30 years. So it's like Detroit, Cleveland, Indianapolis, those large-scale manufacturing sites that had essentially company towns develop around them with, you know, 1, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom housing. Housing stock is a challenge in Indianapolis. It probably won't meet future market demands, but those manufacturing jobs have left, and what we're creating is manufacturing logistics on the periphery. So think out in Hendricks County and up in Boone County, those jobs that are being created. Marion County residents should be able to access those jobs. I know CERTA's, the Central Indiana Regional Transportation Authority, is doing a good job of creating the North Plainfield Connector, so their express routes out to the warehouse districts and up to Whitestown, where Amazon and Express Scripts and all those jobs are. So we really need, we at the Chamber view transit not just as a millennial attraction tool. Actually, we rarely talk about that. We have a much more immediate workforce mobility issue right now.
Well, and another point that you make is with the decline of the manufacturing or the loss of it, that also went our middle class. So that's why the growth numbers in less than $25,000 a year is because those jobs don't exist in Marion County anymore. And even the jobs that are in manufacturing and or logistics that we were discussing in the periphery, the challenge is they're not paying the same wages as they had in the traditional manufacturing, and that's why you're seeing that spike when you see those maps of the poverty level increasing, because those jobs don't exist like they used to anymore. And then that also impacts education as well, because you don't have the parents that are doing the strong middle class income saying, you know, I really want you to now go to IU or Ivy Tech and get a trade or whatever it is, and now that actually doesn't exist. So you can see how everything is interrelated.
Public health, how is it that the unhealthiest county in the state, Marion County, is right next to the 2 healthiest counties in the state, Boone and Hamilton counties?
There's no Whole Foods downtown. Oh, no, we're getting one, I know.
Is this thing, yeah, Angela's done a lot with offender reentry. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
But I know we have more. I want to do some Q&A, but that is important.
This is our word, cooperation. There is an unparalleled level of regional cooperation going on. The mayors and town council presidents of any community that have more than 10,000 residents in central Indiana, they get together every other month to tackle regional issues. So while I'm a Indianapolis guy, we need strong suburbs, and the strong suburbs are really recognizing that we need a strong Indianapolis, Marion County. There's the regional development plan, which we submitted for the Regional Cities Initiative. We had the mayors and town council presidents from across the region sign off on a $25 million ask for projects that are solely in Marion County. It's the Red Line, and then investing in 16 Tech. We're chasing money as well through regional cities for the regional trail network, but to get all these mayors to sign off and support us as a region submitting stuff that's almost solely in Marion County could not have happened 5 or 6 years ago. And so it's really important that they are coming together, that they're dialoguing, and they're really are starting to address some big regional issues like workforce, water, and transit.
Mark, we want to leave some time for questions here.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why the question.
Yeah.
Keep the mic.
So we have about 15, maybe 20 minutes for questions. We have Whitney and Katie who are going to have some floating mics if you'd like one. We would prefer if you would ask your question into a mic if you could, because we'd like to record everything. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I will direct Whitney and Katie to come by and hand you a mic. See one right up there, Whitney?
Is this on?
And
Okay.
our 2 esteemed panelists will do their best to answer your question.
Do our best.
You guys touched a little bit on understanding more of where the tax revenue goes in terms of public safety, and you mentioned that it doesn't actually do anything to hire more police officers. So my question is, what should we make of mayoral candidates making claims that the first thing they're going to do when they get in office is hire 150 more police officers? Is that a good idea or a bad idea, or what does that mean?
That's a great question. They actually can make a proposal once they're in office to increase taxes, to go have designated funding to go towards hiring police officers. That would be an option, and they're both saying that, and it goes hand in hand with the perceptions of crime. The challenge really is that it's no silver bullet. So even if they both are able to get, either one of them, whoever gets into office, they really are able to raise revenue and hire more police officers, that's still not going to solve everything. That is not the silver bullet. It has to be more holistic and comprehensive, and that's part of the challenge, is just being able to make sure they understand that even with getting more police officers.
I think you're also hearing the candidates talk about redeploying current resources. So we have a lot of officers, sworn officers, that aren't out on the street. So it's probably going to be some combination of redeploying existing resources and hiring new police officers. The challenge is hiring them fast enough to replace the retiring police officers. We also did a poll, part of our poll we released. It's on our website if you really want to check it out. The good thing is the community really understands that crime, really facing and solving the crime issues is a systemic issue, and it's not just as simple as hiring more police officers. There's a lot about education, having a safe and home life for children. And so it's going to take a multifaceted approach. Simply hiring the police officers isn't going to be the silver bullet. It's important, but I think what came out of our poll, and very positive, is that people really do get that.
So we have a question over here.
Has anybody done any kind of a study to show what the impact is of the, I guess they call it the suburban flight from the center of Indianapolis out? You talked about the loss of revenue from income taxes. It seems to me that I can't find any evidence on this, but us having to hire more police and trying to help out with these poor students and these families who are struggling economically is somewhat of a direct result of that flight out, though. I think like the magnet schools and things like that are a good example of that.
Yeah, so the county continues to grow, and the affluence in the county continues to grow in pockets. But it really is it's not just the flight of population, because we are growing. It is the flight of wealth out of our community. Again, school systems are a big driver. More house for your buck. Newer houses, housing stock is a huge issue. So it's not just that we have crime or a perception of poor schools. It's a combination of things, and we're not alone, right? Communities across the nation have seen suburban flight. I think what the challenge is, we bought 30 years or 40 years of Unigov, and that allowed us the success. Success masks a lot of issues, and so I know the Center for Public Policy, Drew Classic. If you guys don't know who Drew Classic is, just Google him and get on his Facebook or his Twitter account, or get on his webpage. He's done a lot of demographic analysis of Marion County demographic shifts.
We have a question over here, Whitney.
I am a commuter from Johnson County. Obviously, come to Marion County for one of those good jobs that you say is up here. But I mean, do you really think that siphoning money from these donut counties would not put them in the same position that Marion County's found itself in?
So what we have proposed is an incremental, non-resident county option income tax. That means every county in the state should be able to impose, our position is up to 1/4% income tax on non-residents. So Johnson County has people that leave Marion County to go to Johnson County to work. They should be able to capture revenue from those workers that are using their roads, using their police services, using their water and wastewater. They need to be able to capture that revenue to pay for it, just like Marion County does. So we're not proposing a Marion County only solution, and it's not to divert existing revenues. It is an incremental, non-resident income tax.
And along with that, as we improve transit and more workers are able to get to those jobs in the outer ring suburbs, then that will yet again supplement. So it's not really siphoning, it's supplementing each county's ability to get income tax. So actually everybody will win. It'll balance out in the most incredible way. You'd be amazed.
Gentleman in the back with the red shirt, please.
How many homeless residents do we have in this city, and how many abandoned homes, percentage-wise, do we have?
I don't know how many homeless. I think last count I knew about the abandoned housing, which is 18,000. Is that somebody, INRC, can you help me out? There's something like 18,000 abandoned homes. We have a significant amount of abandoned homes. And we have to be honest with ourselves, folks. A lot of those homes aren't the cool Queen Anne's that can be rehabbed. Some of them, we're going to have to make tough choices, and some of them, that means demoing some houses. They are attractive nuisances. They are, you know, they drive crime rates. They mask a lot of crime. I'm not saying every house has to be torn down. By no means. I lived on the Near East Side for a decade. A lot of houses being rehabbed there. But to say we're going to rehab 18,000 homes, I think we need to be a little bit more honest with ourselves.
I wanted to start by thanking you for putting together this very illuminative presentation. I was curious because I often think of government as being like a business. It helps me to establish a frame of reference for it. Do you have any other analogies that you could draw government to that might make it easy for other folks to understand?
Even as a business organization, we say government is not a business. They can learn a lot from business practices, but the very reason that government should be delivering a service is because the private sector won't pick it up. There are a lot of outsourced nonprofit organizations that handle a lot of functions. But just claiming that government should be like a business is limited because that's just not their end goal. They have a larger, a larger goal than that. I don't know another analogy.
I can't think of an analogy. I cannot.
Over here.
Yeah, she's
Wouldn't looking at raising the minimum wage within the county help with the low economics?
No, that's illegal. We're not a home rule state. The state has already prohibited municipalities and counties from enacting a minimum wage above the state minimum wage, which is pegged to the federal minimum wage. So if you want to affect change on minimum wage, go to the State House. Go to the State House. Go to the State House.
The State House. That's what we mean about the home rule. Oh, you mean the home rule change?
Our position that we should not put Marion County at a disadvantage and that it should be pegged to the state minimum wage. So if you really do want to raise minimum wage and raise the standard of living in Marion County, then you have to do it statewide. You're citizens, you vote too. I mean, honestly, I tell all chamber members, anybody, we spend a lot of time developing certain expertise in a subject matter, getting to know legislators. I don't live in 150 legislative districts. I live in 2, 1 Senate and 1 House district. And they know me, so they don't exactly, I can't call them as a concerned citizen. Believe me when I say, if a legislator gets 10 calls on an issue, it is a crisis, and that must be handled. And I'm not joking. You are here, you're engaged citizens. This is a much bigger room it has much bigger capacity. Why aren't more people here? If people engage in their local officials and their state elected officials, I'm not even going to touch the federal government. I don't do federal lobbying. I don't know anything about it, but I do know that you can affect change at the state and local level, but you have to be engaged and you have to constantly contact your elected officials.
Call in right.
Is there a question back here?
I have a question, but first a correction, sir. You said there are 4 hotspots designated by the IMPD for crime. There's actually 6.
6, I'm sorry.
And
Thank you.
shameless plug, my colleagues at WFYI are doing a great project called the Intersections Project. There's some radio stories as well as great visualizations. We go to wfyi.org/intersections. My question is, I know that public transportation, requires permission from the state and other counties, and it's extremely complicated. But I was just wondering, as you've told us, sales tax doesn't go to the city. Why? And you said that as the chamber, your priority is people's jobs, for public transportation. Why is the first rapid transit line to be connecting Broad Ripple and University of Indianapolis?
That is because we're seeking 80% federal funding, and it is an extremely competitive process. A lot of people think, oh, great, it touches Broad Ripple and downtown, but it also touches many of the most distressed areas, Crown Hill neighborhood, right where one of the 6 hotspots is. I think it's the average income is $14,000 less
yeah.
than the average, the regional average wage. It touches 95% of the region's college students. It touches major educational and health institutions. It is the most competitive of all of the transit lines for federal funding, and that's why we are pursuing the Red Line as the first rapid transit corridor, because we have a good chance of getting 80% of the capital picked up by the federal government.
It's proof of concept. So if we can show that this works in that dense community, then we are able to say, let's continue to get more dollars to expand it throughout the city so we can actually effectuate even more residents.
I think
and
it's
more jobs.
169,000 jobs. The
Yes.
gold standard for any BRT in the nation is the Cleveland Health Line.
Yep.
This far outpaces job access than the health line. So get on the Red Line, Indigo's website for the Red Line. Check out all the stats. I think a lot of people do have this misconception that because it's touching Broad Ripple and downtown, it's mainly serving wealthy people, and it actually serves some of the most distressed neighborhoods in our county.
BRT stands for Bus Rapid Transit, right, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. We have a question up here.
Hi. So speaking of 92 counties and 92 little pieces of government, the Kern and Shepard report addressed some of that not that long ago. Is there any movement on any of that report ever?
I wish. You know, what came out of Kern and Shepard was it made it a little easier to for governments to consolidate, but also the thought was for a lot of people that supported the tax caps, property tax caps, was if you starve them enough, they will consolidate.
Twisted.
But so no, nothing's really happened in a few years.
So we have time for a couple more questions.
I just have a tiny little info point on that last question. This is nowhere near all of the good stuff that was offered up in Shepherd Kernan, but one tiny little thing is cooking here in Marion County, and that is we are in negotiations to merge the Beech Grove Library District into our library district. It's one tiny step, but it would eliminate one unit of government. So we'll see if we can get that much done.
We have time for 2 questions if we hurry, and the lady here and the gentleman here, we're going to try to get it
Oh
in.
no, you wanted me to throw stuff at you if you fell asleep.
I did not fall asleep. Thank you very much. Whenever you think of crime, everyone immediately thinks of police. After consolidation, our sheriff's department seems to have a very hefty budget. What is the sheriff's department doing?
I'm going to take a broad pass on that, but I'll just say that was one of the reasons that Senate Bill 621, 621 got a lot of negative political attention because it eliminated the 4 at-large seats, but it also gave the city controller a little bit more ability to control county budgets outside the purview of the mayor's office. So there was a concern that there was increasing, that they continue to add staff, increasing budgets with little control, and so 621 went a little bit down the road of helping to solve that.
Very good.
Pass.
Say pass.
You could find Mark
The
afterwards.
sheriff does, currently sheriff serves warrants. The sheriff provides security at the city-county buildings. The sheriff runs the jail. I don't believe that the sheriff is supposed to be running any road patrol.
Last question here, sir.
On this red line, we're going to get 80% funding to get it set up, but who's going to pay for the ongoing maintenance of the thing? I mean, just like we just dropped a bunch of bolts on people's heads with that shiny stadium you were talking about, somebody's got to take care of it, and I don't think the federal government will do that.
No, it's a little less than $6 million a year that will come out of the Indigo budget. They have a mix of fare box, property taxes, state revenue, some federal. Federal really isn't used for operating; it's much more for capital.
Right.
But the Indigo budget is largely still paid out of property taxes, fare box, some combination of property taxes, fare boxes, and state support. No. On fixed route service, fare box is somewhere between 23 and 27%.
So could we have a round of applause for our presenters again, please? We will allow them to catch their breath. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Angela. We are going to do the poll again real quickly, and while we're getting set up for the poll, hopefully this will go very quickly. I've asked Jackie Needus to come down and preview our next two events. Jackie Needus.
Thank you, Matt. If you thought tonight was fun, we have much more to go. We will be back here on Tuesday, October 6th. We should not be competing with anything on the other end of downtown that particular night. And that night we will be going deeper into the question of about the issues that we face. You got a little taste of some of that tonight, and they will have a great panel with us that night. Mike Huber, Julia Vaughn, Kelly Bentley, Judge David Shahid, Troy Riggs is going to come back and talk with us, and Kim Irwin. So we have a great panel that night to go deep into some of the issues that we're facing, and again, to take your questions and have some discussion about it. So I really want to invite you to come back on Tuesday, August 6th. Hope to see you then. October 6th. I'm going backwards. Tuesday, October 6th. Thank you.
So, Mark, Angela, you guys did pretty well, it looks like. So, excluded cities and towns, they include Speedway, Lawrence, Beech Grove, and Southport. Technically, Speedway is a town, so that the question should read cities and towns. That's my mistake. And all four of these are excluded cities and towns within Marion County, so the correct answer is E. Beech Grove and Speedway are also cities and towns, but it really is all of the above. Julie, could you put the next question up, please? How many townships are there in Marion County? So far, so good, Mark and Angela. At the beginning, we had 12 responses other than 9. And this time there's clearly an answer of 9 townships. Let's see if I can do them. Pike, Washington, Lawrence, Warren, Center, Wayne, Decatur, Perry, and Franklin. There we go. Third question, please, Julie. What issue is the biggest expense in Indianapolis? So Mark and Andy, you guys are doing pretty well here. All right. So almost, or I guess 92% of the city's expenses cover public safety, which includes criminal justice services and police and fire services. This is a huge, huge part of the city budget. At the beginning of the evening, we had 18 people who said something else, and so those people have learned that it's in fact public safety. I really hope you all enjoyed this event, learned something about the city of Indianapolis. I love my city, and it is a city you need to love because it can be a complicated place. So I really commend you all for being here tonight and wanting to learn more. We have an election coming up the first Tuesday in November. It's very important. You have to vote for the mayor of Indianapolis and your city county councilor if you live within Marion County. Correct. And need to be registered by October 6th. So make sure you go online to Secretary of State's website and make sure you're registered to vote. And make sure you get out there and participate. The next event will be October 6th right here again, and we'll be talking about more in depth the issues that we face here in Indianapolis. Thank you all very much for coming. Have a good night.